Welcome to Chris's Corner on pensinitiative.com. This is the second installment of Chris's Corner, and I'm glad to be back talking to you good people this week. As I mentioned last week, Chris's Corner is a lot like the Coach's Corner, except the views expressed here aren't completely and totally insane, nor are they generated by paranoid xenophobia. So let's get to it. My first topic of today is about the Pens losing last night to the Avalanche. As predicted, the cry from Pens fans on Twitter and Facebook and social media outlets in general has been pretty dramatic. You think we'd have just gotten swept by the Boston Bruins. What does last night's loss mean? Nothing. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. It's no big deal. Here's the reality. The reality is we ran into a red-hot goalie in J.S. Giguere. He stood on his head all game. There was almost nothing the Pens could do. It means nothing, however, in the grand scheme of things. Do I wish we would have won? Absolutely. Did they steal a win on our ice? Yes. Hell yes, they did. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely not. So everybody can step away from Twitter, step away from Facebook, and relax just a tad. I promise. Things are still on track. Sidney Crosby's still the best player on the planet. The Pens are still off to a great start. Everything's going to be okay. Second topic that's gotten a lot of discussion the last few days is what to do about Olli Maatta. And let me just tell you that I'm a tad confused about how this conversation has kind of played out. Instead of asking the question about whether or not Olli Maatta is the piece that we need to make this team from a Stanley Cup contender into a Stanley Cup winner, instead we're having a debate about things like, is this going to be burning a year of his entry-level contract? Is this going to make him, if they play him for 40 games or more, it's going to burn a year of his NHL eligibility, means he'll be a free agent a year sooner. Here's my question. Who the hell cares? At the end of the day, who are we? The Florida Panthers? The Columbus Blue Jackets? Those are questions for loser franchises, not for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We have Malkin, Crosby, Neal, Fleury, Letang, all playing in their prime. This is a win the Stanley Cup or go home franchise right now. Any questions about burning eligibility are completely and totally useless. The only questions that need to be answered is whether or not Olli Maatta is a defenseman who can make a difference for this team and help bring a Stanley Cup back to Pittsburgh. That better be the only consideration that's taking place right now. If he gets sent back to London, then that message, from my perspective, is that he's not ready yet. If he stays, it means he's here to help. Forget contract implications. Next topic I want to come to is upcoming games. Pens have a lull in the schedule until this weekend when they take on the Islanders at Console on Friday, and then they head north to take on the Leafs on Saturday before heading down to Carolina to face the Hurricanes. Let me tell you a little bit about the Islanders. The Islanders are like the Avalanche, except without any goalies. So if you're looking for a bounce-back game from this team, if you're looking for the Pens to put up some big numbers, if you're looking for Crosby to have a monster night, then Friday night is a night you're going to want to be in front of your television set or at Console. The Leafs game on Saturday should be a competitive one. The Leafs are off to a nice start. Their offense is firing on all cylinders, and it's been led by a resurgent and finally healthy Joffrey Lupul. I think the biggest question of the weekend really is about what night do we see Jeffrey Zatkoff in net. Obviously, we got a back-to-back on Friday and Saturday night, which means we are very unlikely to see Marc-Andre Fleury on both those nights, which means what night do we see Zatkoff? I, for one, hope that Bilesman makes the decision to sit Fleury on Friday night and play Zatkoff at home in Console against a lesser team in the Islanders rather than on the road at the Air Canada Center against a very high-powered Leafs offense. Now, this year hasn't been all roses and wonderful. And in fact, talking about Zatkoff brings me to the biggest concern that I have right now, and that's the backup goalie situation. If there's one take from the Avs game that Pens fans should actually take, it should be some worry about the goalie situation. If you want to win in this league, you have got to have two goalies that you can count on. And that was what the beauty of having Thomas Vokoun on this roster was last year. It's not about not having faith in Marc-Andre Fleury or waiting for the tires to come off with Fleury. It was more about having a second goalie who was an accomplished goalie himself, who was somebody who, wasn't going to be able to be out there every night, but you don't need him to be out there every night. But you need him for a situation like this weekend when you've got back-to-back games. And unfortunately, with the blood clot situation with Okun, that's not what we have here in Pittsburgh. Will Zatkoff eventually grow into an NHL goalie? I hope so. That remains to be seen. But if I'm Ray Shero, I am keeping my eyes open right now across the league as I'm talking to other GMs about adding a potential second goalie to this roster. We've seen what a difference that it can make, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs. I think that if we're going to make a move, that ought to be the move we make. I want to thank you guys for taking a look at this, and Chris's Corner will be back next week with more insight and analysis.